Okay, hi, this is Kate, and welcome to Ordinary Earth Song. Now, in the last reading I did, I ended with group 3, saying that I was going to do an extended reading. So I thought I would do it whilst I was in the right frame of mind. So this is about 2 minutes after I finished the other reading. Just because I wanted to make sure that I didn't miss anything, and I feel like I'm in the right frame of mind to do the follow-up now. Now, this reading was all about using the imagination, which can be a positive force for creating a life outside the box, outside of what would be considered a normal formulaic way of living, potentially. It will allow for thoughts that exceed the boundaries of normal or acceptable or average ways of thinking. And those are probably not words that I should use because they sound derogatory. They're not supposed to be. They are just describing what the majority of the population actually does live with. Now, I'm not saying everybody doesn't have an imagination, because they do. A lot of people have an imagination. They read books, they watch films, and blah, blah, blah. But those things tend to come from somebody else, and they're a way of escaping into a different type of world for a moment, where somebody else has thought of all these things and have created it, put it into either a film or a book or a blog, or it could be anything, a poem, an interpreted dance. And I've just realised I didn't plug my microphone in for some reason. I unplugged it. Anyway, I will carry on and hope that the beginning of the audio there wasn't too rubbish. So yeah, the imagination can be a real stimulator, in the sense of it can lead to escapism, but it can also lead to knowing you have the ability to seek, knowing you have the ability to imagine concepts outside of what would be considered normal concepts. Like, it allows us to think about the possibility that there are other dimensions. It allows us to think about the possibility that there are spirit guides, angels, there are there's a higher self, that we are spiritual beings here having a human experience, that we live after we die, and we were alive before we came to this life. That there is a universal consciousness in all of us, seeing out through our lens of who we are, that we are all these things and more, and that all these things are possible because anything that can be dreamed of or thought of is real, has been created, is manifest somewhere at some time in the universe or universes. You have an imagination. You can think about all of those things. It allows you to think about all those things because it's your imagination, because it allows you to dream bigger, because it allows you to see outside the box, because it allows you to think of the possibilities in the potential of all that is. The imagination allows you to do that. But then there's also this card came up for deception. Deception. I think growth was here as well. I unfortunately put them all back in the deck before I decided to do this reading. I'm running out of water. I've just run out of water. Awesome. Anyway. So imagination used in the right way can lead to growth. It can also lead to people feeling like they are being deceptive or being deceived, they're being lied to, that they are not being told the truth of things. That the imagination allows people to be untruthful, to present some form of trickery. It's a bit like people that don't like magic because it's trickery. And there's no lie in that. Using the imagination does allow people to present something other than the truth. It allows them to distort reality. It allows them to fragment events so that they can be presented in a certain way that's more favourable for them, for example. So yes, the imagination has a dual aspect to it. It has a possibility to create and be new and to be exciting and different. And it has the possibility of imparting some level of fraudulent fear on other people who can't believe a word you're saying because you're using your imagination. But then these people would also be people that would read books and watch films, and that's because reading books and watching films are things that other people have created. They're put into a book or a film or whatever, and then you can watch it and you can escape into that for a little while. Okay. But then this deception thing came up as it can also be a distortion and the imagination can be a catalyst for distortion to take place. And a distortion can be something like my first thought was body dysmorphia. Okay. Now I'm using that as an example because it's something I've had and have still. And when I was a child, well, so I might as well tell you this. When I was a child, 11, I started to discover I had hair where there shouldn't be hair. It wasn't on my armpits, on my legs, or my private parts. It was somewhere else. And I was like, oh. So I tried to get rid of it. I ended up giving myself rashes and scars and stuff. And I ended up with quite a distorted view of my body. I hated my body, I hated my skin, I hated everything about me. And that fed into my adulthood. And I ended up being really quite self-conscious and unable to show myself to the world because my imagination was telling me I was a freak and that I was not acceptable and that I could not be touched because people would know, that they'd feel it. And my imagination fed into that. It fed into me. It fed my thoughts as a child growing up. And that really did affect me for a very, very long time. And it fed into other things in my life. I ended up putting on a lot of weight. And it was my imagination that caused that whole thing to grow in my little head. It grew, it inflated, it distorted, it became unmanageable, it became something that really did dictate what I could and couldn't do in my life. And it meant that I didn't have a relationship. It got so bad, I've never had a relationship. I'm nearly 50. I've never had a relationship. Because my imagination when I was so young was so strong and I was so convinced. And I was convinced for decades until I realised it was okay. And it's perfectly normal, actually. I've got PCOS. And that means a lot of different things. But it also means I'm not unusual. It means that it's just all this stuff. But I grew up in the 80s and the early 90s, and we did not talk about this stuff. Women were beautiful. Women had perfect skin. Women that were on TV at the time were very model-esque. They were literally perfect. And I saw myself and I was like, wow, I am not perfect. And my body has let me down. And my imagination fed into that big time styly. And I did not know any different. I really did not know any different. I was a little naive thing who had no clue, had never had a conversation with anyone about anything like that. I didn't even know it was possible for women to have hair in those places. And it just, I thought I was so different and I thought I was so other that I was never going to be accepted. And I convinced myself of that when I was a child. I remained convinced of it later on in life because of other things that happened. And then because of those other things that happened, I also hid away. And that was that. Never had a relationship. Never been with someone. And quite frankly, I don't want to. I've got so used to it. I've got so used to my own space. I'm fine. I don't want to. It's absolutely fine. I don't think I could be with somebody else right now because I think they would drive me mad. Anyway, the point of telling you that is that the imagination can have a really strong negative effect that we are not aware of on who we are, how we present to ourselves and to the world, what we believe about ourselves and about the world and about other people. It can distort all of that into a place where we become completely narrowed down into a little pool of hopelessness. I remember being a little pool of hopelessness when I was in my teens. I saw loads of boys I really liked and I couldn't be with any of them. I wouldn't let myself be with anyone because it was easier to not be with them than it was to be with them and then be rejected. It sounds like such a self-pitying story, and that's what it is. This is a very self-pitying story, very, very self-pitying story, but it's the truth, and it's basically what happened. And basically I didn't have the conversations, I didn't have the knowledge, I was naive. No one had ever spoken to me about something like PCOS. I had barely had a conversation about my period, which started when I was 8. It wasn't something we talked about. And on the TV, the world was presented with beautiful people and people, things like the Clothes Show and the A Team and all the other American programs where everyone's perfect. It was just the way it was. It's what I believed, what I saw, and we never talked about it. We never had the conversations. We only had one conversation. That's about shaving my legs. I really wanted to shave my legs. I wasn't allowed to until I was well into 15. Anyway, the imagination can be toxic if it goes unchecked, if it becomes a means for other people to manipulate you, as in they try to convince you of the truth of what they're saying, because what they're saying they've used their imagination to create, but they're trying to convince you it's true, right? So there's all sorts of different things that imagination can be used for not the good, not the greater good. Why would you use it like that? Why would you use your imagination for not the greater good? You wouldn't. I don't think you would. Why would anybody do that? I mean, I did it to myself because I didn't know any different. And my little teenage brain, my little child brain was like, I did not know how to cope with anything. And basically, little horse. And I wasn't aware. I was not aware. That's the key here. I was not aware. I didn't have any kind of frame of reference. I had nothing. I didn't have I didn't have a means to understand what was going on. I just had my brain and I had my body, and my brain was telling me my body was disgusting over and over and over and over and over again. Until it became the truth. I mean, I don't think it is true now. But back then, I definitely did, because I did not know any different. I didn't have the awareness. With awareness, guess what? We become more able to see a different point of view. We're able to see the imagination can be a good thing. We're able to see when someone's lying to us. We're able to discern. We have discernment if we are aware. If we're not aware, we don't have discernment. If we are aware of the possibilities, we have discernment. I did not have discernment when I was a child. I didn't even have it until I was around about, what was I? I must have been around about 28. I know it sounds really old. I was around about 28 when I finally looked back and I was like, what the fuck was that all about? What the hell did I do to myself? Why did I believe that so much? At that point, it was too late. I'd put on loads of weight. Left with a legacy. Left with a legacy that I look back on and I'm like, oh, well, that's fun. See, the thing is, right, at the end of reading number 3, there was a message. And the message was, allow yourself to be. Allow yourself to accept who you are in the given moment. Allow that person to be who you are in the next moment. Allow it and accept it. Allow it and see it for simply nothing more than what it is. Now I hear those words and I think about the little me when I was 11. Oh, I was 11. No, I wasn't 11 when I found the hair. 11 was when I became 5'8" from whatever height I was before and was covered in stretch marks. So that was that. I must have been about 14, the hair started. If I'd have been that little 13-year-old and I'd had a conversation with someone and they had said that to me, and they said to me, stop. Look at yourself. It's not that bad. It's normal. It happens to a lot of women. There are ways to deal with it if you want to, and you don't have to. But you need to stop, accept who you are, and allow yourself to carry on being that wonderful human being, regardless of the hair, despite the hair. Maybe if I'd had that conversation with someone, maybe if I'd been able to stop and look at myself and allow myself and accept who I was, skin as well as body as well as soul, maybe I wouldn't have tried to get rid of all the hair in the many ways I tried, and ended up using things that left me with rashes and teeth marks and scars. Maybe I wouldn't have done that. Maybe it wouldn't have got worse. Maybe I could have sat back and really worked on my self-acceptance And these things were not things back then. These were not concepts back then, back in the late 80s, early 90s. When I was a child, these were not things that I knew about. They were not discussed. And I wish I could say it to everybody that's going through something where the imagination is toying with their heads and saying to them, you're not good enough, you're not, and I'll just say to them, stop. Stop. At this point, stop and imagine, accept yourself. Imagine that you accept yourself. Imagine that you are okay. Imagine that you are allowing yourself to exist as you are. And imagine that by doing that, you are actually giving yourself the opportunity and the potential to come into a full understanding of your being so that you have potential in the future. Imagine that. Is there anything else for this message? Surrender and tranquility. Find your inner peace. Find your inner peace by recognizing, being aware of when your imagination is distorting your reality. You can recognize it because you will feel all the negative things. You'll recognize it because you will feel panicked. You'll have anxiety. You will feel incongruent. You will feel unattached. You'll feel devoid of hope. You'll feel alone. You'll feel abandoned. You'll feel like a failure, or like you're not worthy. You could feel all these things. You could feel one of these things, whatever. It's a sign. Every time you feel these things, it's a sign that something is happening that you need to look at. And if it turns out to be something that's in your imagination that's telling you you can't do these things, you can't do that, this isn't happening because you're not worthy, and so on and so on. Because I think the example I used in group 3 was that you get people who are so embedded with the idea of manifesting, that they are following all the doctrines, they are following all the patterns, they're following all the formulas they've been taught by all the people online that are giving them the steps to manifest their wealth and blah blah blah, and they're just not achieving it. They're not achieving it. They're not achieving it. They really want it. They really want it. They really want it. And it's just like, stop for a moment, because what you're doing is you're pushing it away. For one thing, your imagination is then telling you that you're not worthy and that it's not working because there's something wrong with you. You keep trying and then you become disheartened, and then some other stuff can come in and give you really negative emotions about everything that you believe in. And anything could happen. It's just everything starts to fall apart. Your imagination is the one that's feeding this into you. You're allowing your mind to trigger everything in you that's saying you're not worthy, that you're not successful, that you're a failure, that you can't do these things, that you're just not able, that there's something wrong with you. It's not true. The message is to stop. Surrender to the understanding that this is your imagination. It's not real. This is your imagination. This is your imagination. This is your imagination. And it is powerful. And it is creating every next moment you're going through right now. It's your imagination, and it's creating every next moment that you're going through right now, because that's the way the imagination works. It creates the next moment, because that's what you're imagining the next moment to be. And if the next moment is going to be you telling yourself you are not worthy and that you are stupid or you can't do this, then that is what you are going to be. If the next moment is going to be allowing your imagination to tell you and to show you and be just accepted, just allowed, just surrendered, just this is what is. Allow your imagination to take you there. Allow your imagination to feed into the creation of you as you in that moment, despite any wants or desires or discomforts or self-beliefs or negative self-talk or anything else. Just allow yourself to be in peace, in harmony, in who you are, in peace, in harmony, in who you are. Just allow it. Allow you, because you exist. And you exist because your imagination is bringing you always into the next moment. And you need to allow the next moment to be just is. It breaks the cycle. It breaks the cycle of the mind. It doesn't stop it from coming back. You need to keep doing it. And you need to replace that cycle of mind, of imagination, that's distorted imagination. You need to replace the distorted imagination with something different. You can't wipe it and let it go. It won't just disappear. You need to change it. You need to morph it. You need to find a way to surrender to it. Not to it, but to the understanding that you are more than the negative self-talk. And sometimes you have to let go of things to allow other things to come in. Is there anything else to this message? Because again, it doesn't feel complete. It does not feel complete at all. It feels like there's a whole other layer. What's the layer I'm missing here? What's the layer I need to bring out? What's the layer of no mind? It's the layer of no mind. It's the layer of no mind. The mind of the human being is distortion because we use language, and language is distorted knowledge, and it is knowledge that we have formed from potential formulaic logic that we have discovered for ourselves. We have named things, we have labelled things, we have used words and language, and we have conceptualized what it is to be a human being. We have conceptualized what is and is not acceptable as a human being within certain cultures and societies. And each one functions as its own little unit. And these units fight amongst themselves. We live in disharmony, but we also live largely in harmony with each other. The disharmony is on macro level. When we zoom into the micro level of familial groups. And they include family, friends, colleagues, the smaller groups of people that interact with each other every day. These people, these groups, are in harmony with each other. Normally, they interact on a level that allows themselves and allows each other to interact successfully. You have your own patterns of interaction. You have the masks that you wear to be the person that you think needs to be presented at that time so that the interactions can be smooth. You need to allow for these interactions to flow with each other, and you do. Largely you do, because you're comfortable in those situations. You are comfortable in those interactions because they have a purpose, they have a means, they have a pattern, they have a jurisdiction. And the jurisdiction is that they are functional within the little group that you are in. And then you come away from that group and you become insular with your own thought processes. And you have many, many options to go away with. You have options that involve using imagination to grow, to become imaginative, the word demons, imaginative demons who create books and films and who love to share their stories and comic books and drawings and dance and songs and poetry. They'll share it and they'll love sharing it because it's using the language, it's using the observation of the human condition, it's using the ability to impart not only the story itself and the imagination behind the story and the fantastical worlds that can be created, but also a social commentary that can stimulate further conversation in the larger groups. So imagination has got a really positive place within society. Now that person goes off and becomes insular because their imagination is telling them something negative about the group that they're with. It makes them paranoid, or it could be about their own body, it could be about their own belief system, it could be about anything. The imagination feeds into the brain and it uses the words, it uses the systems, it uses the patterns of behaviour and the observations that are made about the groups that they're in and about society at large to create a dichotomy of behaviour and belief systems that is purely imagination focused and implemented, because that is the way imagination works. Imagination is one or the other. It's either creative or it's destructive. It's destructive when it is feeding in on itself and it is pulling the person down with it. And the person gets pulled down with it because the imagination creates every next moment. It's all in the imagination. We are drawing it forth all the time. The imagination can be used for good and it can be used for bad. And the bad tends to be something that's self-destructive. It can be destructive towards other people as well. But when it's being destructive towards other people, then it is also self-destructive. It's either self-destructive or it's self-destructive and destructive towards other people. Now we wonder about whether or not we are able to stop the destructive side from happening. And the answer would be, we are. Because we are both sides of the coin all the time. But the only way we can do it is if we are aware that it's happening. Now, Kate has been through this recently, where she has been going through a very hard time at work and has been able to witness what is happening while at the same time having her imagination destroy every single thought that she was having about the situation, pulling her apart in the situation, causing her to have panic attacks, and moving her into a state of complete and utter anxiety where she was not able to cope anymore, where the world was literally falling apart, because she was overwhelmed by how much work she was being asked to do and she couldn't cope. And she was able to see all this happening. She could see it happening. She couldn't stop it from happening. She knew it was taking place and she could see it impartially. She could see it, witness it without emotion. She could see herself crying. But she couldn't stop it from happening. She couldn't bring herself out of that situation. She couldn't stop it. Until, and this is important because it got to the point where her body, because she has MS, her body said, no more. You cannot do this anymore. And it gave her numb feet. And it gave her hands that didn't work anymore. And it made her dizzy and off balance. So she had to stop work. So she wasn't listening. She was not listening to her mind. She was not listening to the spirituality. She was not listening to anything, because all she could think about, all she could think about was work. Every moment that she was awake, she was thinking about work. She could not sleep because she was thinking about work. She was getting about 3 or 4 hours sleep at night if she was lucky. She'd go to sleep thinking about work. She'd wake up thinking about work. She'd make lists about everything she needed to do. She'd be panicking constantly for 3 months. And she knew this was happening. She could see it happening. She could witness it happening. She was aware of it happening. In the third perspective, she could not stop it from happening because it just got worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. For 2 reasons. For one, she was in a situation that was only going to get worse. The demand from the business was growing and she couldn't stop that from happening. And for 2, she wasn't listening to the fact that she was crying all the time, having panic attacks and trying to work still. Her mind was breaking. She was overwhelmed. She was not listening to that fact and was not taking time to stop. So her body had to step in and say no more. It was only at that point, her body stepping in, saying no more. It's taken 2.5 weeks for her to get back to a place where she can now function on any level outside of work. She's not thinking about work constantly. This is the first time Kate's been able to channel anything. And she's aware I'm saying this. That's why she's laughing. She's holding her head. And she's a bit uncomfortable that any of this is being shared. The reason she couldn't stop it from happening was because she was still in the situation. She was still there. She was not able to tell them to stop giving her work to do. She was not able to let herself take time off to recover because there was so much to do. And genuinely, it took her body to turn around and say no more for her to then get signed off work. So in that respect, she's very lucky she has MS. So the way to deal with these things is you have to remove yourself. You have to remove yourself from the situation for a little while, so you can look back. You can look back and see it clearly, because that's what Kate's been doing in the last 2.5 weeks. She's been writing. She's been writing it all down, everything. She hasn't finished yet. But it's helping her see things clearly. It's helping her open up to being channel again. She's opened up to tarot readings again. She's opening up to exploring what she's going to do next, because she has realised that working in the environment that she was working in is not in alignment with who she currently is. And who she currently is a spiritual being having a human experience, who is not a corporate person and does not fit into the corporate environment anymore. So when the demands come in from the office for all the things that need to be done, and even though the work is overwhelming and it's a ridiculous amount of work, she doesn't want to do the work either. It doesn't help. It doesn't help when she doesn't want to do the work. She doesn't want to do the work because it doesn't feel aligned to herself. It makes things a lot harder. So these things you can become aware of. You have to step away. You have to look back. You have to step away, look back. And that's why when we previously said stop, you need to stop. You need to allow yourself for a bit. You need to be present. You need to accept what's happening. It takes time to do that. It's not like you look back and then 5 minutes later you're like, oh, okay, perfectly well, accepted, blah, blah, blah. Doesn't happen like that. Doesn't happen like that. It can't happen like that because there's so much genuinely to look back on and think about. There's a lot to accept about yourself. There's a lot to become aware of. Because it's not all one layer, it's several layers of being, it's several layers of you, right? There are reasons why you are where you are. There are reasons why you've got to where you are now. And those reasons are what you need to peel away, the layers of you, to allow yourself to accept you as you are, to be at peace with that. And that takes stepping away, it takes time. It takes a moment of peace where you are not badgering yourself about something, where your imagination isn't telling you need to do this by next Tuesday. Where it's telling you, it's giving you a deadline, where it's telling you you have to achieve this thing, otherwise you're useless, where it's telling you all sorts of horrible things about yourself and all that negative self-talk. It's telling you all this stuff. You need to step away from that. You need to step away from it. And it took Kate 2.5 weeks to step away from it properly so she could finally voice and see and start realizing some things about why she's been through this experience, about who she is and who she wants to be, and about allowing herself to be that person. Well, shit. Okay. Surrender. I've surrendered. Fine. I'm sorry. I'm not angry. I'm just... the mirror. The reflection. I think that's everything that needs to be said, actually. I've told you an awful lot about myself, but I think it was useful in that I think it's not an unusual story. I don't think it's that weird. I don't think it's that unusual. I think a lot of people go through this stuff. And it's good to know you're not on your own. And not everyone is able to take a step back. But if you can, take a step back and really think about what happened, why, and letting it go, and then fully seeing it. I mean, what I've been doing is I've been writing, as myself said, and I've been looking at what happened in the last 3 months, why I chose to go into that situation, what happened in my past that led me to be this person. I'm still doing that bit. And then I'm going to look into the future and talk about who I want to be, which is still a mystery, right? It's still a mystery. Yeah. So anyway, I'm totally spun out. I was not expecting all that to come out. Makes me extremely uncomfortable, but we'll see. Okay. I hope this meant something to someone and that it helps in some way, shape, or form, and that it made sense. Anyway, thank you for listening, and I will speak to you soon. Bye.